Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the hearing to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging our 41 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Introducing the panel members. To my left is Gisela Rempo, and to her left is Mr. Brent McIntyre, representing the City of Winnipeg from the Assessment Department, Eric Frolick, and our recording secretary is Kelsey Harrison. Just to we have, I want to make a statement about any past orders that are probably in anybody's brief, whether it be the city's or whether it be the applicant, will not be considered. Okay. So we're not going to have our secretary take them apart or anything like that. We just will just ignore them. Right. So this afternoon we'll be hearing an application for revision of the assessment roll according to the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have to be described in each application, and we will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn in testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. It is to be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the City Administration. We make decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing, and if you're a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this afternoon, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant. Following the swearing in, we will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then it will be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this afternoon. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We'll ask you to swear in Mr. Frolick or affirm him, and the same with Mr. Becker.
Could you please state your name?
Yeah, it's Eric Frolick.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Could you please state your name?
Douglas Becker.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, we'll just follow the docket that we have in front of us. So we'll go to 999 King Edward Street. Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready.
File number is 193703. Roll number is 07011102100. I'd like to make a recommendation based on my analysis to reduce the value to $4,214,000, where I'm matching the rent for the restaurant aspect of this property.
Mr. Frolick, can you, oh, I see, I'm sorry, I'm just a little slow. I see it's written down here.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Becker.
Mr. Becker, are you in agreement?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Frolick, please proceed.
Continue. So we have two buildings with 6 different premises. We got effective age for this property at 1970. We have a land area of 235,819 square feet. We have a leasable area of 38,046. And we have a land to building ratio of 6.23. When you look on page 2, you can see there's a variety of enterprises in this building. There's an enterprise, there's Deep Fort Industries, there's also a burrito, Splendito here. And you can see the pictures on page 2 and 3. On page 4, you can see an overhead picture with regards to that there is a huge amount of surplus all access land on this. It could be surplus, because one thing that's really interesting with regards to development within the city of Winnipeg, where areas are popular, Northgate Shopping Center is a great example of this, is that you didn't think there was any room for more commercial development, and they put areas of commercial development there. And at the bottom of page 4, What you will notice is you'll notice where it is in the St. James community. It's just going southbound, just between where King Edward and Century split off. Property owners have been compliant with regards to completing income and expense mailers. And for whatever reason, there's a history with regards to, if you look at page 5, one unit's been vacated, unit 4 being vacated at 3,900 square feet. But unfortunately, I've tried to find any sort of advertisements or any lease information on that space, and I haven't been able to find any information on that. So it has been vacated, but I haven't been able to locate any information. On page 6, with regards to the
Mr.
minutes.
Frolick, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yep.
Do you have a workup for your recommendation?
I do actually.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem, let me just get my glasses here.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that's the right one. Actually, Doug, I do have another, would you accept the value of $3,990,000? Because I had two workups here, because like we were sort of talking in our negotiation period, that's the one that I have on paper. And there's another one here that I could actually send you guys as well.
Well, you're close.
Closer, that's for sure.
Yeah,
3,990,000, I think.
yep, yeah, and you know what I'll do, do you have an extra one there?
Yes.
Okay, because I actually gave him my extra one by accident.
That's that back.
And I'll. I think we were talking about, what are we talking about, this value? Okay, at what point?
I don't think so.
No.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Becker? No?
I still think I have a pretty good case.
Okay.
Sorry.
You know what? I'm trying to get late to the prom, you know, working hard.
Mr. Frolick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So continuing on page 6, looking at our brief, so we do have that one vacated space there that's still listed at 3,900 square feet. And then we got a rent there at $15, which is the Hoyle Lens Canada Incorporated at 3,200 square feet. We have the DeFord Industries at $6.95. We have the Enterprise Renter Card $7. And where I made the recommendation with regards to the restaurant at $19, you can see that there. And then looking at the bottom portion of this, it's showing the different aspects of the step-up lease. Where one of the rents are going is at $6.95. And the next one here that we have is at $19 for the restaurant and $15. So the actual rent for this property, not including the book rent for the vacant space, is $9.24. And if you look at my recommended value for this property, it's $7.25. So I'm actually being very generous in my eyes with regards to the recommendation that I've made. Page 7, referred to my workup with regards to the one with regards to the restaurant being taken off. With regards to, that was at $23.95 and I matched that to $19. And that aspect of the income stream on page 7 works out to $586,000 at the bottom of page 7. On page 8, this shows you the model generated rates that we have here, where it works out to the potential rent is $275, $647, using 4% vacancy, expenses of 2% shortfall, 3.75, net operating income of $253 with a 7% cap rate. That portion of the value worked out to $3,628,000, but you could reference the value that I offered here at $3,990,000. What I've done here is I've gotten some rents that are in the neighborhood on King Edward Street, on Omens Creek, on Stevenson Road. They're showing a range of rents from $6 to $9.88. You know, we got a larger rent at $7 at 21,500 square feet, which is actually pretty similar to the rent for the Enterprise, which is 19,500 square feet at $7. With regards to page 11 in our cap rate study, we show a range of cap rates between 5.5 and 9.8%. And then we're actually showing the cap rates that were provided by Altus with regards to cap rates that they've used. There's been much debate with regards to the Slate portfolio sale, but all their other cap rates are under 7%. And so with regards to the cap rate of 7% that we're using, we feel quite comfortable with regards to that. We also talked about, with regards to our non-recoverable expenses. I got the entire documentation here if we need to go through this again. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Becker, questions of Mr. Mark?
Did you check to see how long that space has been vacant?
You know what? It's been at least since 2015.
Okay.
And so, but what I found puzzling about this is that if it's been vacated for so long, how come I haven't been able to find any documentation with regards to them trying to lease out that space?
That I don't know. It is 2020 though.
Yeah.
Maybe
But it's
been
like,
leased.
not even, like from nothing, you know what I mean? So, because then this way I would have had a reference point to say, okay, this is what they're trying to lease it for, you know, because sometimes with regards to leasing arrangements, you know, when they're asking too much, that's why properties go vacated.
Did they put a book rent? You said on their mailer?
I think you put the book rent for the vacated space at $7.
I used 8.
Okay, I can't remember.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Mr. Rimple?
Yes, I'm wondering if you had an opportunity to inspect this.
I've
space.
driven by it on many occasions, but I haven't inspected it. It's a car rental. You know, I was able to gather some pictures with regards to inside the car rental that I haven't included here. But the car rental space, like when I look at the overall effective age of the property of 1970 that we have for this, it could be newer, but we haven't done anything with regards to it recently.
Can you tell me or show me on the map that you have provided where the vacant space is that has not been leased for potentially 5 years?
Oh, I think it's
Or is it
written,
in one of your?
I think on page 2,
Okay,
it's beside the one that says so if you're going from right to left, you got Enterprise, you got
Yeah.
the Fort, and you have Hoya.
Yeah.
I think it's the one that's marked with the brown sort of,
the one in between.
the one just to the immediate to the north of the very north of the subject property.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions, okay?
Mr. Frolick, everything is model driven?
That is correct.
No overrides or anything like that?
Not in this circumstances, no. Well, actually, I did put out the $19 that I made for the recommendation. That was an override
Okay.
because our initial model was 23.
All right, Mr. Becker, the floor is yours.
If I can ask the board to turn to page 4, just under property description. I just wanted to mention that the original portion of this property, that's without the burritos bonito, was built in 1968 with a total plan area of 37,829. It's got the wall height of 22 feet. If you looked on the pictures that Mr. Merrick was showing, that there's the front portion there that's at 12 foot, and in the back portion, the warehouse portion is at 22 feet. I would ask the board then to turn to page 6. For the market rent, well, I'm going on not what Mr. Merrick referenced, but what was in the original assessed value. So at the top for the warehouse portion, the assessor had applied a net rent of $7.71 per square foot. Now, the following rents in place were $15 for Hoya Lens, $6.95 for Newport, and $7 for Enterprise. What we did is we looked at the market in the area down King Edward, and based on our comparisons, we felt that a fair rent for the vacant space would be $8. So we're going with an actual total rent of $7.81 a square foot, and that actually totals $279,265. So we're actually quite a bit higher than what the assessment department has. However, okay, for the restaurant income at the bottom, we're using the paid rent as to what Mr. Froelich did for his recommendation, the $19. I guess the biggest difference here is the vacancy on the warehouse portion. The assessors applied the 4%, which I understand is their standard vacancy for industrial in this area of the city. And what I've got there is a table of the vacancies. And they started in 2015, where there was actually 54.6% vacant. In 16, there was 19.9% vacant. And then since then, there's been the 3,900 square feet, or 10.9%. For our valuation, we're using a 10% vacancy rate. For the restaurant, we're using the 3%, the same as what the assessment department used. Our shortfall rates mirror those of the assessment department. Again, under non-recoverable, it's all just this position that it should be 7%, not 2%. And the next difference then is in the capitalization rate. We feel that the cap rate of 7% is too low, like we said. The majority of this building was built in 1968, and 7% feels low. I can go through our study if you like, but we're suggesting for this type of property that a 7.25% capitalization rate should be applied in the case. So, our summary, based on our summary, our rent's at $7.81 a square foot, a 10% vacancy for the warehouse portion, with a 7% non-recoverable and a 7.25 cap. We're suggesting $3,039,000 for the warehouse portion, and then for the restaurant portion, based on the actual income, but we're using a 7.25%. We're using the same cap for both portions. If you look at the site plan of the subject property, it would be pretty hard to take that restaurant area and split it out into its own role, and therefore we've used a 7.25 on the entire space. Page 11 and 12 is the assessor's workup. Page 13, this shows the building areas. The top portion there is the original at 1968. That was the $35,579, and then the wood frame restaurant that was added in 1995. The rest is the rent roll, which I saw on Mr. Mears. Now, I guess what I'd like to, for that table where I put down the vacancies, if you look at the one on page 19, that's the 2017 mailer, or as of April 1, 2018. It was the 3,900 square feet of vacant. Page 20 is the 1916 mailer. It was 3,900 square feet vacant. And the next one was the 2015, and it shows that there was actually the 3,900 plus the 3,200 square foot, and the 23, the restaurant was vacant as well. And then the last one is of 2014, where the entire space was occupied. So based on our analysis, and a 10% vacancy on the warehouse and a 7.25 cap applied to both income streams, we're asking the value to be reduced to $3,576,000. And I'm open to questions.
I thank you, Mr. Becker. Mr. Froelich?
So when you took this property in appeal in 2016 and 18, did you ask for a very low vacancy rate, or did you use model parameters?
I don't know, it's the first time I've done this one.
Okay, because vacancy goes up and down.
Usually we don't adjust from what the Johnson report is or what the market report is unless it's chronic. This has been vacant for several years.
Yeah, but you have no evidence of them they aggressively try to market this property as being vacated, so there may be business reasons for it potentially.
I don't know why anybody would want to have 10% vacants.
But I question why they don't have, there's nothing in the system with regards to why they're not advertising it to be leased out.
I'm not sure where you looked, but I didn't look, so I don't
Okay.
know.
And with regards, and in your cap rate analysis, do you have any cap rates that are greater than 7%?
Yes, we have one on, well, it's a slate proposal.
Okay, and we know the debate that's taking place on that, correct?
I don't, but
Okay.
I understand there's been several debates on it.
No other questions?
I thank you. Mr. Rempel?
Yes, I'm just wondering, did you say this is the first time you've handled this property?
Myself personally, our
Yourself?
office has been doing it for many years.
Okay. So you're not aware of any reason for this vacancy in this space for 5 years?
Other than it went vacant, they haven't been able to fill it.
But you're not aware of them trying to fill it?
You know, I didn't look, but I can't see them not. You know, it was always 100% occupied prior to that, and if Mr. Froelich was looking recently, maybe it's been leased up since then.
Have you had opportunity to actually visit this space?
Not recently, no, not since, not the last one. I, similar to Mr. Froelich, drove by it 100 times, but I never actually went in.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Mr. Becker, I'm just looking at some of the results here. So gross-wise, you're $20,000 higher
Rent?
than in the rent.
Yes.
And then if I look at some of the figures that the assessment department have, and so you're 20 grand lower.
Well, it's basically that if you take 10% vacancy, you know, 10% of the rent, and we apply $8 to that space, then you put shortfall on that as well.
You know,
It doesn't take long for that to make, and then you add a quarter of a point to the cap rate.
yeah, okay. Summation if you want, either party?
The only thing I'd like to add is just with regards to the future development of the even though there's a parcel of it that is vacated right now, there is actually development around the airport is quite popular. There's a lot of development taking place. I think there is actually potential for another business operation to go in some aspect of that land would translate into higher market rent in some area, in some aspects. But we haven't added anything with regards to to excess land on the property, but it's just something that I'd like to leave the board with.
Can I follow up to that?
Yes.
There's a lot of speculation there. I don't know anybody that's developing in this area. They're all developing in the new off of Inkster and Route 90. And also, if you were to start taking some of the land away, you may lose Enterprise as your tenant.
All right.
And Mr. Becker, you guys say you don't speculate and put information out there for the panel members to consider?
We'll go on to the next one, 2136 Notre Dame, Mr. Froelich.
Yep, for sure. File number is 193708, roll number is 070300760000. Property we have is at 2136 Notre Dame Avenue. We have two buildings, originally built in 1965. We have wall heights that are between 11 and 18 feet. That are listed here. We have a land area of 124.96. We have a leasable area of 63,800. And we have a land to building ratio of 1.86. When we look at the subject property here on page 2, we see that they have loading areas both on the portion facing Logan and also on the portion facing Katniss. It's just directly across from Red River Community College, or to the Red River. It is southwest of Red River Community College on page 3. And the picture here shows an overall, on page 4, shows an overall view of the property. What we have here is we have rents that are at $575, $465, and $495 for the subject property. And then on the bottom shows a bit more detailed. These income expense mailers from Quad Rail are hard to read, and they're just showing the changes to $575, to $465, and $465. And I got some more res showing on the back page. Okay, what I have here, so that's a 2017 mailer on the first page. On page 6, what I've shown is I've shown the 2016 mailer of 0%, where it's been 100% occupied. The 2000, I didn't include the 2015-14 mailer, but those, it also continues to be 0%. And then you're showing 0% in 2013 and 2012 with regards to the subject property. What we've done here is, in this circumstances, we've actually matched the rents. And so what happens here is the actual rent that we have for this property matches what's on the income and expense mailer. Our blended rent for this property is $5.13. We use a 4% vacancy loss, even though that there's 0% vacancy, because you are going to expect some vacancy. We got 2% expenses shortfall for $375, using a 7% cap rate. Comes up with a value of $4,263,000. What I've done here is I've tried to get some rents of similar age properties. They're ranging from, say, $6 to $9 of different sizes. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Becker, questions?
Okay, Mr. Froh, this one, if I look at your first page of your brief, land to building is 1.86,
Yeah,
so that's small.
not necessarily. We've had a lot of situations with regards to subject properties where there's been redevelopment, where buildings have expanded to have a 2-to-1 ratio. And I'm thinking of Manitoba Liquor Commission on Buffalo Place. There's another example with regards to a property I had on appeal on Pandora. So a lot of situations like in 20 years ago, I remember reading old board orders that we had used a 3-to-1 ratio, and that switched over to 4-to-1. But in situations like this, where there's good access and there's a lot of redevelopment that is taking place, where organizations have chosen to have a lower land to building ratio as long as they have good access. And to me, this property has good access because it has access on River Dane and it has access on the side street. So I don't necessarily believe that a significant reduction should be used here. And also, that would be also reflective of the rents. The rents are a bit lower.
Okay, this is a 1965 building,
That is correct.
and you mentioned Quadrille is the property manager?
That's what it said on the income expense mailer.
Are they a good manager in your mind? They have quite a bit of,
They have a huge portfolio.
so they probably list their places if they go vacant.
Well, I have no issue. I have no issues with regards to finding quadrille stuff here, so yeah.
Because they were the managers of the previous property as well.
Which explains to me, which I don't understand why that's the case, because I found other ones as well.
Okay, your cap rate is 7% on this one.
Yeah.
It has a small land to building and it's older than the other property. Is there no adjustment for capitalization rates when it becomes to age or land to building or?
Well, when we're looking at this, we have it as listed as being a 1965 building. I'm pretty sure so if it's 1965, that means that the actual age for this building is 1957, which is at the end of its economic life. And so what I'm thinking is that it's still a prosperous business. It's owned by a reputable company. So if anything, our effective age is too low. So I feel quite comfortable with regards to the value that we have for this property at $4,087,000.
Effective age though is based on usually the original age plus any improvements that are put into it.
Yeah, and I do believe that there have been improvements with this property.
Okay,
And so that's why a cap rate wouldn't be necessary.
on page 11, you show our Altus position for cap rates.
Yep,
So in our little table there, we've got investment category B, 7 to 7.75, or non-investment grade 8%. So where would you class this one?
just one sec, Mr. Becker. So when I'm looking at the subject property, our assessed value per square foot works out to $64 a square foot, which is within the range of your 7% cap rate that you have listed on page 11 of my brief, which is why I feel comfortable with regards to the value that we're presenting here today. I understand what you're saying, with regards to, it is an older property, but the lower end of it is 7%, and we're at 7%. So if it's not a brand new building, it would be an A, but it's still a solid property, which is a B. And, we have buildings on Q8, which is built in 1968, that had a cap rate, according to your study, at 6.94%. And we got a property on Logan here with a cap rate of 6.36%. So I think our 7% is indicative of market conditions.
I have no other questions.
I thank you. Mr. Rempel?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
You may have answered this question.
Okay.
There's a deduction, although it's under excess land, of $176,000.
You know what? As I'm trying to be effective here, one of my colleagues made the deduction for that. and I forgot to reference it, and I apologize. I don't agree with it, but what happens, so which is why I feel like our value is quite fair. So in fairness, our value should be 4,263,000. My colleague made a reduction of 176, so our assessed value is 4,087,000. But overall, you know, we've actually factored in Doug's adjustment for land here, even though I don't agree with it. That's why I feel comfortable with regards to defending the value that we have.
But there is no excess land.
I mean, it was a negative deduction, so additional land value, because it's in brackets, we reduced the value of that. So we took the value from 4,276,000. Additional land value, because it's in brackets, shows a negative behavior, which is why the assessment dropped.
So the site is not big enough for the building.
One of my colleagues
Okay, I'll
One of my colleagues made the adjustments. I'm not seeking an increase here, right? I don't agree with what had happened here, but I could only control it, just like there were situations that I had last week where we made a mistake with regards to vacancy. There was an override with the vacancy. It was missed for the 2020 period, and where the vacancy was too high, I created a situation whereby I came up with a value. There was one withdrawal, there was one recommendation that we agreed to with the agent. But in some circumstances, you know, what's on paper here is what I'm defending.
Because quite frankly, I don't think I've ever seen this.
You know, there's another one on this docket that we have coming up as well.
Okay, then we're gonna see another one.
But it's not something, and I discussed this with my supervisor. It's that, because arguments have taken place with regards to board decisions that have taken place where there have been deductions for that. And I don't agree with that, because the one I had a property with Sid last week where the land to building ratio was 1.5. NLCC's 1395 Buffalo Place. Property I had last week with Sid was 1595 Buffalo Place. What they had done is they reduced the size of the property from 75,000 square feet. They reconfigured it to have additional loading space, and the new area for that property is 65,000 square feet. So when I talked to them about that 2-to-1 building ratio, depending upon access, because access is the key, we have another one here at the end of Dublin that we're looking at next, where it also is a bit lower, and also there's a deduction here, but there's good access to it on the street. There's 2 subject properties on Pandora and 30 Hoka, which is an egg manufacturing plant. On those 2 properties here, they expanded it significantly. And what's that land to building ratio is 2-to-1, but there's good access. There's access on Pandora, there's access on Kernahan. So I understand where the applicants or the agents are going with regard to that, but it's just, when we have situations, I'm doing the review process for 7-Eleven Kernahan. We have a land to building ratio, which is the New Flyer Industries. So that ratio, I think, is maybe 3.5 or 3.25 to 1. You know, so it's not, it's a bit higher than what we have here, but there's tons of land to get developed there. We're looking at the box plant, the Cascade box plant in East Kildonan here. We're looking at the Wilmore windows. There's lots of area for it to develop for loading and unloading trucks. Those aren't 4-to-1 building ratios either. So I understand where the agents are going from, but it's only on a site-specific situation, and I don't feel, to answer your question here, Brent, is that even though we put the deduction here of 176, I don't always think that's always necessary.
But you're defending the 4,087,000.
But I'm not asking for an increase, because I'm defending it because I feel overall our value is fair.
Okay, thank you.
We'll be discussing that later. Mr. Becker, the floor is yours.
Just a follow-up question to Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah.
When we first discussed this one, you had no idea what the 176 was for. And based on what we get off the web, the workup, it doesn't show that it's for additional land. So how do we know it's for that?
No, because what happens is in accounting procedures, when there's brackets, there's a deduction.
Oh, no, I know that. but
Yeah.
Well,
How do we know it's for land?
Well, it's under the category additional land. So if it was surplus land, then it would be a positive. Like if it was a situation whereby, you know.
Just leave it there.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another question. One of the ones you're talking about are owner-occupied properties, right? Cascade boxes.
Yeah, but
More Jello in.
the one on The one that recently developed at 1595 Buffalo Place, where they reduced the square footage, where they made it smaller, that's tenants.
That's the liquor board though, right?
There's another one. There's a liquor board at 1395, and then there's 1595. It's an artistry property with SID.
If you have a long-term lease, you can add on to it, reduce the land size. Your landlord's not gonna care because you're gonna pay for the addition. And sure, it reduces their land, but it's gonna affect it when those people move out and somebody else wants to move in.
But if there's good access with regards to loading the trucks, so it's essentially a brand new building right now.
Inkster Park has lots of older buildings that can't handle the newer size of trailers. That comes into effect too, right?
Well, yeah, but even if you look at Inkster Park with regards to land to building ratios of the Sobeys, they actually added another 120,000 square feet with regards to that of the refrigeration area, where their land to building ratio is actually below that. Like, so if land to building is so
It's owner
significant,
occupied, correct?
yeah, and you're always going to make a business decision on what's good. So if a person who's going to purchase that property, they would have the same sort of capacity or the loading issues that Sobeys using.
But a place like this could never be a distribution center that needs lots of trucks there, et cetera. Or
No.
Bison couldn't use it, or Transex. or
Well, because it's
anything
such a
like that.
smaller property, it's like 63,000 square feet, but there is good access here, in my opinion.
But not room for trailers, et cetera.
Well, yeah, but if there was training, if there was trailers, then the zoning would be different and everything like that, right? Because what ends up, like if it's an M3 zoning, then you would need more space. But this is like an M2 zone, yeah.
That's general zoning. That M3 just means heavy industrial. Okay, no, I have no other questions.
Floor is yours, Mr. Becker.
Page 6, please. The assessors used a net rent of $5.13 overall. We have a little table there showing what the actual rents are, and they come out to $5.13, so we're not disagreeing with the rent applied by the assessor. We're not disagreeing with the vacancy of 4% or the shortfall of $375. We're of the opinion that it should be 7% for non-recovered, not 2%. And on page 7 under the capitalization rate, and I'll refer again to the table that Mr. Froelich had in his part. Class B investment grade, 7% is at the very low in our table. This is a 1965 building. It's smaller. It has a small land to building. The wall height is only 18 feet, and therefore we feel that the cap rate should be 7.25. So again, we don't feel that the 7% is fair well, not fair, but justified for a property that's over 50 years old, small land to building, and a low wall height. So based on the actual, on page 8 on the summary, based on the actual rent, 4% vacancy, 7% non-recoverable, 375 for shortfall, and the 7.25 cap. We're asking for an income value of, well, it works out to 389,999, 679, and then there's been a deduction. At the time, we didn't know what it was for. We applied it, so we come in at a value of $3,724,000. And the rest has just basically all been provided to you. Don't look at the last 2 pages because they're board order.
They were,
We can rip it off. It's the last page.
And I'm open for questions.
I thank you, Mr. Froelich.
with regards to the lower ceiling rent, the lower ceiling height, is that not reflected in the lower rent that this property is achieving?
I think that could be on the age. Personally, I think these tenants have been there for many years.
Yeah.
That Echo Heating, I know for a fact, I think he's been there for ages.
So in your analysis, when we've had situations when vacancy are a bit higher than our model generated rents, you've made an adjustment for it. How come you haven't made a negative adjustment for the history of this property not being vacated in the used Argyle? Or,
Well, we have it in our study that 4% is fair for this area.
yeah,
And you even said yourself, it's gonna go vacant sometime
Yeah.
down the road. We only had to adjust for higher vacancy if we don't feel it's in the market area, or if it's chronic.
Yeah.
The previous one was, 5 years as of now, but it was 3 years at the time of the reference date.
okay. No other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rempel.
I just have a question here, and maybe this is because I'm new at this, but if I take a look at the net operating income on the assessor's testimony, and I take a look at the estimated value after adjustments, I calculate the overall cap rate to be 7.3%. Is that not correct?
Okay, you divided the net by the 7087?
Yeah.
That could be correct, yes. I've never.
It's 7% at 4263, 457, but it's 7.3% at the 4087.
Yeah.
If you remove the, yes, after the adjustment.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with you, I didn't do the actual calculation, but it would make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Mr. Becker, that you were in agreement with your gross and the effective gross income for the subject are exactly the same. So it's basically the non-recovery and the 1/4% for the cap rate too.
Yes.
And you followed the same line as the city?
Yes.
And that is, you know, the 176.
Yes, if I followed the questions that I got, if I look at that, because I did look at it that way, then my value would be the 3 million. My value then would be the 3 million.
990.
Yeah, it's, say 900, 3.9.
Yeah.
I did look at that as well, because at the same, we're asking for a higher cap because of the age and small land of building. And then we made an adjustment, so.
Summation, either party?
Good.
Okay.
We'll go on to Dublin, 1830. Mr. Pollock, whenever you're ready.
File number is 192648. Roll number is 05569021,500. We have an assessed value of $2,616,000. 3 buildings here. We have a year built between 1962 and 1965. We have an effective age of 1965. We have a wall height between 12 and 20 feet. The breakdown of the wall height's the following. We have 22,378 at 20 feet. We have 3,554 square feet at 12 feet. And then we have additional 25,754 at 17 feet. When we're looking at the subject property here on Dublin, you're seeing decent access to it. The building looks a bit newer than 1965 in the effective age with regards to the with the curb appeal of it. On the bottom of page 2, you can see there's good access with regards to the loading trucks. And then on the top of page 3, you can see access to it on a side street, which is on Sherwin Road. As you can see here on the bottom of page 3, you can see the access to it on Dublin Street and with regards to the subject property. And page 4 shows just an overview shot of where it's located at, just in the St. James area, in between Notre Dame and Saskatchewan on Dublin. Property owners have been compliant with regards to completing the expense mailers. Part of it's owner occupied with regards to the inlet space. Page 7 shows our breakdown with regards to the subject property. We're showing rents here of $356 and $531, which is actually actuals. What we have here is we have a potential rent of $213, $458, using which works out to $4.12. 4% vacancy loss, expenses of 2%, shortfall $375. We come up with a net operating income of $193,069 with a 7% cap rate. Comes up to a value of $2,758,129. We did a reduction here of $142. Come up with a value of $2,616,000. On page 8, you'll see similar rents that we have in the neighborhood, showing rents from $5 to $7.75. And that concludes my formal presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Becker?
Just a couple, just to clarify, so approximately half the building was built in 1962 and the other half in 1965?
Yes.
And this does, from the overhead, other than access, it does have a very small building.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Mr. Whipple?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions.
Just one, you've done the deduction for the land value, and how was that value determined?
I think what happened is that I didn't look at the details of it because I didn't agree with the methodology of
Okay.
it. So I didn't spend a lot of time researching it.
Okay. So you don't know? Really?
No.
Mr. Becker, the floor is yours.
Okay, ask the board to turn to page 6, under market rent. Assessors applied an overall market rent of $4.13. Applied to the gross building area. There was 2 leases in place at the time because the balance of the property is owner occupied. One was for 36,500 square feet at $3.50, and the other one was for a small portion, 1,950 square feet at $5.31. Unit number 2 is owner occupied. Related corporation and comparable rents for the owner occupied space were considered. We looked at comparables in the area and we came up with a market rent of $5 per square foot should be applied to unit 2, so we have an overall net rent of $4.01. For the vacancy, assessors applied 4%. I have a little blurb there that says that we submit a vacancy rate of 6 should be applied. That's an error, and when you come to my summary, you'll see that I used a 4% in my calculations. On page 7, we use the same shortfall as the assessor, $375. Non-recoverable, we're asking 7%, and for the cap rate again, this one was done at 7%. Again, this is an older building with half of it 1962, the other half 1965. It has a very small land to building. Based on our analysis, we feel that a cap rate of 7.25% is more indicative of the value for this property. So on page 8, based on our rent, we have an overall market rent of $209,161. Not much different than the assessor. It's only about $4,000 difference. And we have a 4% vacancy, 7% for non-recoverables, $375 shortfall. With a 7.25 cap, we come in at $2,468,000. We take off the adjustment, we're in at $2,326,000. And I just calculated if I took the NOI and developed for the assessor, it would work out to 7.3 again for if you remove the adjustment. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Frolick?
Do you know what the land to building ratio is for a lot of your comparables?
No.
No, because your rents and your comparables are significantly higher than the $4 that you're proposing. I realize our rents are very similar, but I'm just curious about, you're asking for an adjustment for the cap rate, but your actual comparable rents are significantly higher than what you're asking for today.
Yeah, they're considerably smaller spaces too. They're in the 12 to 13 range. The only one that's 24,000, that's the 17, that was at 485.
But if we actually look at the breakdown of the 3 properties, we have one that's 36 and one that's 13, which is somewhat, within that range.
No, I felt the $5 we applied for the subject was fair. I mean, that lease on the one for, that's 36,000, that's a renewal too. It done in 18, so.
Okay. No other questions?
I thank you. Ms. Raffle?
Yes, I am wondering why the leasable area that you have indicated differs from that of the assessors.
I used whatever was on the rent roll that the landlord shows as a leasable area. If we go to page 13, the shows the total leasable area there of 52,150 square feet. And that's based on the rent that he's getting on the 3 tenants. So on page 15, you'll see that the first tenant is 36,500, the next one's 13,007, and then Precision Health is 1950. So that's where we get the total leasable area of 52,150.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
I have no question.
I have no questions. Summation, either party? I see that you're both consistent in staying by your guns. You're 7 1/4, 7. All right. We'll go to Wellington at 1741. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Pollock.
I actually had 2 recommendations here potentially. I'll just go with the lower one here, just to mention it, even though I'm pretty sure Doug will not accept it. But it's just the methodology. It's just like, when you go through the analysis of this with regards to the property, I just find it interesting.
Do you have a handout for us
I
there?
will read it in seconds, just bear with me here.
Okay.
File number is 19380, 3890. Roll number is 07002307000. The recommendation that I have here, and it's just sort of interesting because it's at $2,289,000, and I'll pass that over.
Thank you.
But when you're looking at that recommendation, and the reason why I came across this, and let me go through my brief first, and then I'll talk about the recommendation afterwards, so this way my memory will be rejigged. What we have here is we have 2 buildings, 1 story. We have the actual buildings between 1958 and 1974. We have the effective age of this property at 1963. Buildings were built, building number 1 was 17,824 square feet. That was at 17 feet, and building number 2 was built in 1974 at 12,824. Once again, where we have the location of this property, the land area is 56,551. We have a leasable area of 30,548. So, as you can see where this property is located at on Wellington, it's in between Century and King Edward, right beside the old Greenwood Hotel, which is the Best Western, that you can see on the page of top 2, on the top of page 2. This building doesn't look like a 1963 building. And then you can see on the bottom part where you can see some of the parking that they have for it. Then on page 3, on one of the aspects of the building that I was able to find on the web, as you can see by the decor on the top of page 3, it's significantly newer than 1963. And then on the bottom of page 3, you can see the layout for this property with regards to the L shape of it. Page 4 shows where it's located at on Wellington, between King Edward and Century, like I had mentioned. And now we have the rent roll here. So so we have 1 space here. So on the rent roll here at $780, we're showing a gross rent of $12.07. So using our shortfall rate of $3.75 for expenses, we got a net rent of $8.32. Then we have on the next page here, 790, we have an area of 5,930 square feet. That's 625. So I have that matching there, 625 here. Then we have workplace furnishing here at 18,000. At 18,800, we're showing a rent of $6.75 here. So that matches what we have here. And then when we look at the bottom portion of it, and I'm just wondering why my square footage here does not match. But what happens is that aspect of the rent is like a throw-in rent. So I think what ended up happening here is that I just used like a 5-cent rent on that for whatever reason. Oh, because they're showing $3.80. So they're showing $3.80. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at 1741B, BF Workplace on my mailer here. So they're showing $3.80 minus our shortfall rent of $3.75, so I got a 5-cent rent there. So then what we have here is we got my income is $175, $170, using a 4% vacancy allowance. We come up with effective income of $168, $163, using shortfall $3.75 and 2% for other. They come up with a net operating income of $160, $218. What's interesting about that is so that my net income there is $116, $218 with our 7% cap rate comes up with a value of $2,289,000. When we look at the income and expense mailer on page 6, they're actually showing a net operating income of $175,908, which is significantly higher than what I have in my recommendation, but it's actually very, very close to our model generated rent of $176,898. And in the spirit of cooperation, I felt, a slight reduction was could be of use, but when I look at the model, when I look at the income and expense mailer, we're actually pretty close on to the $2,527,000. So our overall analysis is that, I'm okay with $2,289,000, but when you look at the information from the income and expense mailer and what we have here for a model, we're pretty close as well. Showing similar market rents in the neighborhood. I have market rents between ages from 1962 to 1981, showing a range of $6 to $9.88. Our blended rent here is $6.31. So overall, I feel very comfortable with both values that we've presented here. But in the spirit of cooperation, $2,289,000 seems quite fair and reasonable to me as well. Thank you.
Can I ask a couple questions on this recommendation before I say yay or nay?
Okay.
Yes.
I guess the question I have, the last two that we had were all built in the early 60s,
Yep.
and they all had small, like less than 2-to-1 land to building. And they all had a 7% cap rate.
Yeah.
Any reason why this one wouldn't get that adjustment if it's for land?
Because a different different person reviewed it. Plain and simple. The person it may have not been reviewed in 2020, and a person reviewed it and made that adjustment. Sometimes people are impacted by what happens at the board, at a hearing level, so either way,
Because if I took your net income and divided it by the cap rate that the other ones worked out to after the adjustment, then you'd be at $2,194,195.
yeah. But I think the nature of this building here, because it has an office sort of retail component of it, like it's hard, without doing an actual inspection of this property, it's fine. And I'm not too sure. See, when I'm looking, BF Workplace Business Furnishings, so to me, when I'm looking at this space, which has 24,000 square feet of it, and you may have more knowledge about this, to me this has a retail aspect of it, where they're probably selling workplace environments or office space. So that's why,
It would have a higher vacancy rate then, right? The retail warehouse is 6%.
you know what, but it's all relative to the actual performance of it. The actual vacancy is, when I'm looking at it, do they have any vacated space here? Let me just do the math here.
No, that last space that you got 5 cents on, that leased up the,
Okay. Yeah, well, it's confusing though, because the last space is, there's 780 vacated A, which is not listed here. Just give me 1 sec here, Doug.
I'm just saying, if I was to negotiate this with you, I'd be at the 2175.
You know, but the point is, I think I'm being generous with my offer, 5, 6, 7, 9, because if we look at the actuals, you know what, like, when I look at the total space that's being, like, what we have on the mailer here is we have 31,801 when I add the mailer, and we have a leasable area of 30,548. So I actually think, you know, my recommendation is more than fair. Because if I look at the net income that's been provided from the April 17th, 2018 mailer to what we have on our model.
1 second, please. Okay, 1 second, Mr. Chair. I'll say yes, Mr. Chairman. Regardless of what we say, they,
Okay, so the recommendation is at 2,289,289?
yep.
Yes. And members, any questions? These
Sure, I
left?
have that.
Okay. Okay. We'll go to Marjorie?
Yeah.
Marjorie? Yes.
I only made one copy of this. There's a recommendation, Mr. Becker and I did some case management on this property. So we have values for 2020, but we have an agreement in place for 30 for 2018. So I'll read out the property, I'll give you the details of the recommendation.
Okay, do your thing and then talk about the rec.
Yep. File number is 192145. Roll number is 075690322300. Address is 540 Marjorie Street. The initial value was $2,429,000. And Mr. Becker and I have agreed to a value of $2,308,000.
$2,000,000.
$308,000.
Okay. Mr. Becker,
Yes.
an agreement?
Yeah, I've actually recommended to the owner, but I haven't heard back. We just did this the other day, so I will accept.
And just offhand, Mr. Frog?
The rent was
The rent?
$5. Rent $5.50 with all of our parameters.
Panel members, any questions?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
And that was from the original rent of 578.
That is correct. Just for 1 sec there.
All right, we'll go to the last one, which is Airport Road, number 35. Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready.
I'm not as quick as you, Mr. Muir.
Well, I write not too bad, but I can be
Can you
patient.
read your writing?
No?
That's the question.
All right, Mr. Frolick. I
I
know
need to
you-
answer your questions and be thorough with my disposition or my delivery.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, sir. What we have for this property is file number is 193499. Roll number is 07030148,000. We have assessed value of $2,383,000 for this property. We have one building built in 1970, wall height is 17 feet. We have a land area of 67,870, and we have a leasable area of 28,600. And we are asking for this assessed value to be confirmed. What we have here is, you can see the location of this property, or the building of it. It's floor supply. And you can see, with regards to the overhead view on the bottom of page 2. I've never been to this property beforehand. And on page 3, you have an overview map of it, of where it's located at, in the St. James Industrial Park. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out their income and expense mailer. And let me just check something here. The floor supply have been there since at least 2013. The rent that we have for this property is $6.36, which is a bit lower than the actuals of $4.50. We have a vacancy of 4%, expenses at 2%, shortfall 375, using a net operating income of 166,838. 7% cap rate, we got $2,383,000 for this property. On page 7, you'll see the list of our comparables that we have here, showing the effective ranges of rents that we have in the neighborhood. So looking at the comparables on page 7, our $6.36 seems to be quite reasonable. And that concludes my formal presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Becker, questions?
Your first comparable on number 7, that's build night flooring, isn't it?
That's building flooring, that is correct.
So it's more retail?
It has, but it's flooring, so it's a combination of carpets and retail component of it, yes.
Okay, and comparison, 770 Century, do you know what that is?
It's listed as Waring Limited. Waring Believers Limited.
Are they a distributor, do you think, or a wholesale, or a retailer?
You know what, I've never been to the building here, I don't know, but it has a lower ceiling height at 12 feet. And they reported a rent of $7.35, so that's what I can provide you.
Okay, you show on page 1 a wall height of 17 feet.
That is correct.
I look at your picture at the top of page 2. That's misleading, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's a combination of of what I'm guessing here without being an inspection of the property here. It looks like a combination of warehouse space and office space.
Why do you say office?
Well, I just because of the lower ceiling height.
But it's just flowers, right?
It's flower supply, yeah, but it's just,
That's all the questions I have.
I thank you. Ms. Ripple?
Do you know, is this florist supply retail?
my guess is that it does, but I've never been in there, so I can't really comment.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre?
Is that a loading dock to the left on page 2? Just can't make it out.
It looks like it. Where it's protected.
So could it be a distributor?
Well, my guess is it is a distributor. Well, Flower Supply, they've been there for they've been there since 2013. And my guess is that it's a good location close to the airport if they're receiving flowers. And so, I don't know a lot about the properties, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Becker, the floor is yours.
Okay, yes, board, turn to page 2. Mr. McIntyre, as you can see, there's actually a covered loading zone at the left-hand side of the picture there, and then there's an interior one on the right-hand side. It was built in 1970, and I could just give a brief description from, I haven't been in there myself, but somebody from our office has. And the subject property is located on the east side, Airport Road, south of Notre Dame Avenue. Structure is built in 1970 with a plan and gross floor area of 28,600 square feet. More than 50% of the building has low 12-foot ceiling height. The reported wall heights are somewhat misleading as the warehouse has an elevated slab, leaving a clear ceiling height significantly less than the wall height. Subject site is almost rectangular in shape with the total site size, according to the Winnipeg property taxation records, of approximately 69,696 square feet. The site has N2 zoning in addition to PDO airport facility. Land to building ratio is approximately 2.44 to 1. Ask the board to turn to page 6. The assessors applied a net market rent of $181,896 in valuing the subject, which appears to be based upon a net rental rate of approximately $6.36 per square foot. The subject property was owner occupied as of April 1, 2018, therefore market research for comparable rents was undertaken, and the following comparisons were found. The above rental comparables have an average of $5.34 per square foot and a median of $5.27 per square foot. If you look at comparison number 2, it's in this similar area, King Edward built in 1962. That one has a 15-foot wall height and has a 2017 lease for $4.85. Next one is on Sherwin Road, comparison number 3. Similar size, newer than the subject. It has a 20-foot wall height and it has a rent of $6. The next one on Barry is a 2017 lease. I'm just highlighting those 3 because they're the newer leases. Built in 63, it's larger than the subject property. It has a wall height of 21 feet and it has a rent of $504. Based on the comparables above, we feel that a fair net rent for the subject property would be $5.50 per square foot. We're using an overall rent vacancy of 4%, shortfall of $375, 7% non-recoverables, and we feel that the 7% is too low, and we're asking for a capitalization rate of 7.25. On page 8 is our summary. So based on 28,600 square feet at $550 with a 4% vacancy allowance, 7% non-recoverable expense, $375 shortfall, and a 7.25 cap, we come up with a value of $1,878,000. Again, it's in the St. James area. It's an older building, small landed building, and low wall height. And I feel that a fair value would be $1,878,000. And I'm open for questions.
I thank you, Mr. Becker. Mr. Farlick?
Comparable number 5 on Ferry Road. Built in 1958, it has a wall height of 0.
That means we don't have it.
Okay, so you don't know.
No, if we've never done the property, it's pretty hard for us to get the wall height.
So you don't know any of the details of it or anything like that, or
No.
address or anything?
No, and I looked up a lot of your comparables, and if we haven't worked the property before, we don't have all the information.
Okay. Yeah. No other questions?
I thank you. Mr. Rempel?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
Comparable number 6 on page 6, the one on Century Street. 10 years older than the subject. Single tenant. Almost identical in leasable area. And it's at $585 a square foot with 11-foot ceiling height.
Yep,
Why would you pick $534?
we took $550.
Where'd I get the $534? Oh, I took your average.
Yeah.
Okay, why would you pick $550? It's an older building.
It's an older building, but I don't know what that building is. I know the subject property is, it's a wholesale dealer, it's just distribution. And I just thought that based on the newer leases, the $550 was fair. again, it's a matter of opinion.
So in your opinion, is it not the best comparable? Given its age, location, size?
No, Sherwin Road is just down the street. It's just 2,400 square feet less in size, 7 years newer, but has better wall height at $6. That's number 3.
Yeah, right, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Summation, either party?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Mr. Becker, thank you for your presentations and results, the balance of the results forthcoming. Mr. Frolick, thank you for your attendance.
No.
Is that your last hearing?
This is my